Well, welcome back to another episode of Unusual Pairings here at Odette Estate Winery, here in our beautiful commercial kitchen. I'm your host, again, Adam Ryan. I am the events manager for the Plumpjack group of wineries, and I'm really excited about what we're going to cook today. But before we get started, and just while I have your attention, there's a couple of things that I have to say personally and on behalf of Plumpjack. Now, as a white man, I cannot understand 401 years of pain, degradation, suffering, and debasement. And I can't understand the fear and the anger that the black community is feeling today. That's my privilege. But what I do know is that those feelings and those fears are absolutely real and 100% founded. As citizens of this nation, we must address head-on the issues of police brutality and the sustained injustices against black communities. We just have to do better. We have to. And here at Plumpjack, we are grieving the senseless murders of Sean Monterosa, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Emmanuel Ellis, Tatiana Jefferson, Michael Lorenzo Dean, Stephen Clark, Terrence Crutcher, Ahmaud Arbery, Botham Jean, Alton Sterling, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, Tanisha Anderson, Eric Gardner, Philando Castile, Anthony Hill, Samuel DuBose, Michael Brown Jr., Sandra Bland, Walter Scott, Jordan Davis, Ernest Satterwhite, Oscar Grant III, Yvette Smith, Tommy Yancey, Keith Childress, and many, many, many more. And I am sorry. Black Lives Matters is not a declaration that only Black Lives Matter. It's a plea for an understanding that Black Lives Matter too. Because sadly, to too many people, they don't. Now, racism is a stain on our culture and on our nation that must be eradicated. We cannot tolerate this kind of systematic oppression any longer. Plumpjack is committed to rejecting the ugliness of racial prejudice and improving our corporate, civic, and our national culture to better reflect our values of inclusion and diversity. If you want to know more about what Plumpjack is doing, you can log into our blog at the Plumpjack blog. Now, I'm very privileged to be here today with you to talk about two of the things that I really love, and that's food and wine. And the thing I really love about food and wine is they serve as a bridge. They can bridge people, they can bridge communities, they can bring us together. And during times of despair and during times of joy, somehow either food or wine or both often are bringing us together. So with that very, very heartfelt and heavy thing said and done, let's move forward today. We'll go through this food, we'll start cooking, and I'm very excited to share this dish with you. Now, if you'll remember, last week we hinted that we were going to do something really unusual. We were going to pair steak. Whoa, my goodness, I already pulled the cord. Ignore that. So we're going to pair steak with our Chardonnay with a beautiful screw cap, which makes it really easy to open because I've already opened it and poured myself a glass. So if you haven't poured yourself a glass, please do, because honestly that's just the best part of this whole experience of cooking. And we are going to talk a little bit about pairings and how we can make something like Chardonnay pair with steak. It's really about spices that we learned last month when we made that ahi tuna and paired it with a beautiful Cade Cabernet Sauvignon Howell Mountain. And today it's going to be about sauces. So we're going to make one of my favorite sauces. That is the Bearnaise. If you've had Bearnaise before and you're not familiar with what Bearnaise is, think about hollandaise. Switch out that lemon juice, add a little bit of white wine vinegar, and you have, again, a classic Bearnaise. So I'm going to walk you through all the steps of making a Bearnaise. It is, can be a little scary. You may hear people tell you, oh, you don't make it, it's going to break on you, meaning that the fat and the oil separate from one another and it just looks like this. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that, how to save it if it does happen, but I'm going to make it really, really easy with you, or for you. So let's see here. The first thing that we want to do today is we need to clarify some butter. You're welcome to go out and buy pre-clarified butter, also known as ghee. Basically what you're doing is you're separating the milk fat from the butter fat. We're getting rid of all those solids, so we have a nice, high-fat butter right here. What you're going to do, start this out very, very slowly. I like to do it on a gas stove. We're going to just put this into a small pan. This is about 14 ounces of butter. That's 3.5 sticks of butter. That extra half stick of butter, save it because we're going to use it. We're going to need it when we are making our mirepoix, which is our shallot and tarragon and vinegar reduction. And then we're also going to need a little bit when we finally end up cooking that beautiful ribeye. If you haven't taken your ribeye steak out of the refrigerator and you're cooking along with us, go ahead and do that. We want to bring that up to room temperature. It can sit out for 30-45 minutes. And so go ahead and get that out of the fridge as well. So you want to do this very slowly. You don't want to bring this butter to a boil. I just have it here set on the absolute lowest setting that I have on the gas. We want to really let it slowly start to separate. What we're going to do is we're going to scrape off and skim off all of the solids that rise to the top and those that settle to the bottom, leaving us with just that butter fat. So I'll show you a little bit about how to do that once it is melted off. Next, let's get started on the other sort of tedious part that takes a little bit of time, and that is making that mirepoix I mentioned. So we're going to start with 2 shallots, and I'm going to start dicing these. I'm going to get my pan out, and while I cut here, I guess I should say hello to my parents if they're watching. I just am assuming that they are. If there's anybody else out there who wants to say hi from Facebook, I'll be glad to say hi back.
We got Russ Gallup in the house.
Nice.
He says he's with the Odette house and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Thank you very much, Russ.
We also have Zoe with us, and she says, thank you, Adam, Ryan, and Plumpjack for those words. Heart.
Heart to you too, Zoe. Thank you very much. I actually have it on good authority that that Zoe was watching last month's episode last night in preparation for today's episode. Alright. So shallots, you're going to need 2 shallots for this recipe. We're just taking off that husk, leaving us with just the nice bright insides. Scrape that away. We'll start cutting here.
Christy Newman says hi from Michigan.
Good day, Chrissy. Now, if you'll remember, I showed you how to cut shallots last month, and one of my favorites is you just leave the root end on there, and so we've kind of sliced it into a little bit of a flower here. And here, I'll show you on this next one right here. So we just cut it right in half. Watch your fingers. And then we're going to come right along. We're leaving everything connected. And I'll show you why. Because then you just get rid of that piece and you have all this beautiful shallot falling off there for you. Makes it nice and easy. So, shallot is one of my favorite things that I think sometimes people think can just be substituted with an onion, and it really can't. It has a much more delicate, bright flavor. It's something that is necessary for great dressings, great sauces. It's definitely, you know, spend the 50 cents on a shallot and add it to almost any dish that you're making.
We have greetings from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada.
No kidding.
Graham
Welcome.
Stringer's in the house.
I've never been to the eastern part of Canada, but I've been to the western part of Canada, and it is one of my very favorite places in the whole world. Beautiful food, beautiful people, beautiful country, all of it. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, we're going to take just enough butter, see if I can get this one out, just enough butter to coat these shallots. And we're going to do what's called sweating the shallots. So we add the butter to the pan, we'll get this melting. Not too high. Now here you'll see, this is the clarified butter that we're working on. Now you'll see that the milk solids are settling out, a little bit of fat rising to the top. This is a very slow process. Again, give it time. You can even do this just in a warm room. You don't have to do it over a stovetop. If you have the time, go ahead and let it go in a warm room. So the next thing that we're going to need is we're going to need to take a few pieces of this tarragon. Fresh tarragon, beautiful, almost kind of an anise or licorice aroma to it. It's going to add a really subtle flavor to this Bearnaise. You need about a dozen pieces that we're actually going to put into our reduction, and then we're going to want to have a couple extra pieces in reserve just for kind of our finishing touches. So now while I pick these, hopefully you're following along with me, have all your stuff out. Do we have any questions from Facebook at this time?
We're getting a lot of shout outs. Courtney Rhodes McGraw says hi from Louisiana.
Hi,
and
Courtney.
she says, thank goodness her shipment came in before the hurricane hit her.
Oh no, well yeah, you gotta have wine when you're buckled down.
Yeah, and then Regina Rebello says hi from Palm Beach. She loves this chard.
You know, I guess that is one thing I haven't really touched on here. I've just started going right into the food. Now, why did we choose Bearnaise? Bearnaise, this bright, buttery, eggy, lots and lots of vinegar, very vivid vinegar flavor. Why did we choose to pair that with the Odette Chardonnay? Now, the Odette Chardonnay is, I'm almost forgetting about my butter back here. The Odette Chardonnay is very much a labor of love. It's a very small production that we make here at Odette Estate Winery. Jeff Owens, our winemaker, has a fantastic relationship with the Hudson family in Carneros. They grow these old varietal, it's called the Old Venti varietal or Old Lenti varietal of Chardonnay down in the cooler part of Napa in Carneros. And it goes through this very slow, cool fermentation, which really adds these beautiful flavors. It's fruity with like flavors of apricot and melon, and but then there's this bright acidity, all sort of rounded out with this creamy texture, sort of creamy body. It's just one of my very favorite wines in our whole collection. You'll see this beautiful color that it has. If you haven't had this before and you're not a fan of Chardonnay, please give it a try at least once, because it's really there's so much depth and intrigue and interest in this wine. I really feel like this is a wine that really lives. It really does something. Okay, so my butter back here is warm and hot. So we're gonna move our tarragon out of the way. We're gonna add our shallots. Putting this down on a low setting. We're gonna mix that up, just get them coated with that butter. And we're not trying to caramelize or brown these. Really what we want to do is we want them to get this nice translucency. So it's called sweating. So the process of sweating, you give it one stir, you put the lid on, you put it back over on a low temperature or a low heat, and let it sit at least 5 minutes. We're then going to take the lid off one time, stir it, let it sit another 5 minutes, and then at that point we have sweated onions. So I'll show you what that step looks like as we get to it. So we are here, we're going to just chiffonade. I know I've mentioned that in the recipe if you're not familiar with chiffonade, but it is a process of slicing usually leafy greens like this into just thin ribbons. It's really about extracting the flavor off of these, not trying to really mince them. We just want to break them up, let off some of those oils and some of those aromas. So we're going to reserve those aside here. And now, while our shallots are sweating, we're going to start on the potatoes. Now, in the recipe, we mentioned that you want to cut and soak these potatoes. Let them soak in the fridge for 4 hours to 24 hours. What this does is it helps extract the starches from the potatoes. Those starches will then be washed off, and it's going to give you a much better fry. So I've already sliced and soaked these, rinsed them, lightly let them partially air dry. Our oil, I'm using peanut oil today. If you have any allergies in the house, you don't have to use peanut oil. You can use like a nice canola oil, or really any oil that you can bring to a nice high temperature. Olive oil, not good for frying. It'll start to smoke and burn at too low of a temperature. So I have our deep fryer here. We are set to about 300 degrees. Never just dump into a deep fryer or pot. So we're just gonna work in a couple little batches. Let's see here. Yeah, I get about almost all of these in here. We'll just do one round. And we're going to drop these into the fryer. We're just going to leave them alone. We're going to let those, see it bubbling air. Might have overfilled it just a little bit, but it looks like we're going to be safe. There we go. And that's why you don't put too much oil into your fryers or into your pots, because it will bubble over. We're in good shape here today though. And we're going to let those sit in there until they're just a very, very light brown. Again, like a little bit of translucency. This is just the first fry. We're going to fry these again. So don't look and try to get all of that brown crispiness out of it. What we're doing here is we're just cooking the potatoes. We're then going to put them into a second fry so that we get that crispy skin, that really beautiful flavor. So now, while those fry, we'll go ahead and we'll pull this. Let's do this. Our butter is done. So, our clarified butter, we'll grab a spoon. You can see here, it's all milky on top, it's all liquid at this point. And what you want to do is just reach in and start scraping away. And as you start scraping that off the top, you'll see that bright yellow, beautiful clarified butter. And that's what we're looking for. And so I'm not going to do all of this here in front of you. I've already clarified some butter ahead of time. But if you're spending time clarifying, you're just going to want to get all the white off the top, and then you're going to want to pour off from the solids that are down there in the bottom. And what you're going to end up with is just this bright yellow liquid, the clarified butter. And you can just set this aside, let it sit aside and be reserved. We're going to save that for a little bit later in making the Bearnaise. We're going to check on our potatoes. We're doing good. Probably have another minute. And we are going to check on our sweating shallots. So these are coming along nicely. We're starting to get a little bit of that translucency there. They're softening. So we're going to give them just another minute, and we'll go ahead and add our vinegar. we'll add our tarragon, and we're going to add a little bit of black pepper and let that reduce. All right. Any questions at this point? Any other shout outs? Anybody really wants to be heard? Yeah, Facebook.
How'd you learn how to cook?
I learned how to cook from my grandmother. She was an amazing woman. She was a California beatnik. She, in the 1970s, was a school teacher, and she took her family, joined the Peace Corps, went to what was Zaire at the time, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, and an amazing woman who I miss dearly, but I always know is looking down on us very, very happily. And she would take me in every summer. Being a school teacher, she could take the grandkids for the summers, and she taught me and my sister and my brothers all how to cook. We're all pretty good cooks, and so we're all very, very proud of Victoria Venter, my grandmother. So potatoes are done. We're gonna shake them off. We have a little paper towel here. Just gonna lay these out on the paper towel. We're gonna let those air dry. You can let these air dry for 10 minutes, up to an hour. Really, you're gonna let them, you want them to cool off, you want them to dry out a little bit, and we're just gonna set them aside at room temperature, and we'll bring them back out in a few minutes. In the meantime, we can go ahead and turn our oil up to 375. That's gonna be the temperature that we're gonna want to get that golden brown on. So, we're gonna finish out, let's see here, turn off that. So these shallots are just ready for us. Beautiful. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add our white vinegar, half a cup, just throw it right in there. We're gonna grab those 12 chiffonade pieces, reserve a little bit for later, and fresh ground black pepper. About 3 teaspoons. You can eyeball it, just do what you feel like is about the right amount. That feels good. We're gonna put this back over medium heat, and we're gonna let this reduce for about 5 minutes.
We have Maria and James from Denver, Colorado saying hello.
Hello, Maria and James.
As well as Jean Jarvis says hi from Lake Tahoe.
Nice. I wish I was in Tahoe this weekend instead of here working. I'm just kidding.
And Jean wants to thank you for your thoughtful opening comments as well.
Oh, of course. No, it's our duty. It's our duty to stand up and say something when we see injustices and we see wrongs in this world. Too many times people sit back and just think somebody else is going to deal with it. And so it was important to me, our camera crew here, and the entire Plump Jack team that somebody come out and say something on behalf of everybody. So.
Debbie Murray Rich is sending us a cheers from St. Louis, and she
Cheers.
says, hello to the winemaker.
Ooh,
Jeff?
yeah. Hello, Jeff. I think Jeff is at home with his family today. Hopefully he's watching. I think he does. Maybe he'll catch the encore presentation of this. Okay, next thing. Let's take a drink. What is everyone else drinking out there? Anybody drinking anything really special other than 2018 Chardonnay, I would hope?
This particular person asked if they can age this wine because they didn't hang on to theirs and they're not sure if it's still going to be good.
That is a really good question, and the answer is yes. You absolutely can. Whether you should or not is really up to you. It depends on the kind of wine that you like. That's true in the world of Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's true in the world of Chardonnay, especially like this. This Chardonnay does go through a little bit of barrel aging. It goes through fermentation in barrels, and so there is a lot of structure, a lot of acids that hold this wine together. And over time, they'll slowly break down, opening new flavors and new aromas in the wine. The color might become a little bit more of an amber hue. It's really, really beautiful. If you like a little bit more of a creaminess, nuttiness, and maybe like dried stone fruits, then absolutely let it sit in the cellar for another 4 years and come back to it and have something I think quite special. I really love aged bottles of Chardonnay. Here in California they're well done, as well as in parts of Chablis and Montrachet and all across France. Very famous for aging their Chardonnays. All right, we're just checking here on, we don't want to let this reduce too much. You want a little bit of liquid. We still have a little bit of room to go. We're trying to reduce this down to about a third of what it originally started at. And so while we do that, because I'm going to skip right ahead, after that's reduced, we're going to put that in the fridge, and you need it to be cold. That's an absolute must. This recipe will fall apart on you if you don't let that vinegar reduction absolutely get cold. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead, pretend that is entirely done, and I'm going to pull out this nice cold bowl of your mirepoix.
Graham from
Graham.
Edmonton wants to know, instead of the white vinegar, would tarragon vinegar work well too?
You could do tarragon vinegar. What I would recommend, though, is you really want that aggressive flavor of vinegar. That's what really makes this dish together. As I mentioned earlier, hollandaise is the same recipe, only made with lemon juice instead of vinegar. If you're really concerned about not liking as much vinegar as is going to be in this, you could cut that vinegar in half and use half Chardonnay and half vinegar, or really any white wine, but why not, if you're going to have it with a glass of the 2018 Odette Reserve Chardonnay, you could just add a quarter cup of that Chardonnay, quarter cup of vinegar, and have a really equally beautiful product. So we're going to need eggs. That's going to be the first step. Actually, I forgot one thing. Let's get this started. I need hot water. All right, that's going to be good. That will be hot enough by the time we need it. So, eggs. It takes 6 egg yolks to make this recipe. I'm going to go ahead and glove up because we're going to get messy here. We're going to separate these eggs from their yolks from their whites. Gloves are a little on the small side.
We have a shout out from Dad, Thomas Ryan, in the house.
Senor Thomas Ryan,
He
one of my favorite people.
I'm learning so much each time you cook, and your wine recommendations are spot on.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, they kind of have to say that when they're your parents, don't they? My parents were, for a long time, I didn't grow up in a household of wine-drinking parents. They put their money and resources into raising their children, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But now that they no longer have any kids living in their house and they're all here as professionals in Oregon and California, they are finally able to put a little bit of money back on enjoying themselves. And with that, we are here in California always sending them wine. They're always asking for more wine. So my parents have suddenly become almost wine snobs. It's quite lovely. So, cracking eggs. Now you may have heard cracking on the edge, or that's just what you used to do. The trouble with cracking eggs on the edge of a bowl is that you are going to inevitably break that shell right into the yolk, and the yolk is going to run and break apart. And we don't want that. We don't want it mixing with our whites. So you can just do that right here on a flat surface. Break your egg open. Oh, I have a feeling these are going to be beautiful eggs. And I just like to let it run, let the whites run right between my fingers. There's our yolk. We're separated. We're going to do that 5 more times. So we're going to get a half dozen eggs. Break these open. Oh man, this is going to be good. So
Miss Bonnie has entered the comments as well, and she says, you get the credit, Adam, for teaching your parents to love wine.
Wow, that's very nice of my parents to say. So speaking of loving wine, let's go ahead and talk about some news that you may have heard. It was sort of breaking news late yesterday. the County of Napa has officially allowed all of their winery tasting rooms to open. We're very, very excited. We've really missed hosting everybody. We're very, very much looking forward to it. We know that you're all eager to come out and see us again. Just so that you do know, we are in the process of preparing all of our staff and all of our tasting rooms and wineries, getting them ready to host guests again. And as soon as we have a date set, promise we'll be the first ones to know. We will be sending emails to all of our membership, to everyone on our newsletters. And if you got this email, you'll get that notice. And you'll also be able to see this available on our Facebook, Instagram, and websites. We will let you know as soon as we have a date set. It's going to be coming out very, very, very soon. So we're excited. We know you are excited because we've been fielding your phone calls and your emails for the last 2.5 months asking us when. And we finally got that word and we're about to tell you when. So just bear with us for a couple more days and we'll let you know.
Speaking of dads, Father's Day is coming up. Do we have anything planned for Father's Day?
We have nothing planned for Father's Day. No, I'm kidding. Yes, we have stuff planned for Father's Day. I'm a fan of barbecue, and I learned that our winemaker, Aaron Miller, over at Plump Jack Winery, is also a fan of barbecue, and is quite a griller. And Aaron and I are going to get together on June 11th. We're going to meet over at Plump Jack. We're going to sit down. We're going to do a little cooking demonstration. We're going to enjoy some brand new wines that are about to be released. Do I have permission to say which wines we're releasing? Okay, yes. So here's a super exciting thing. Do you love Plump Jack Syrah and Plump Jack Merlot? Yes, of course you do, because nobody's had any for a really long time. Because we had to skip the 2017 vintage. But the 2018 vintage is done. It's in bottles. It's about to be released to you. So on June 12th, it will officially be released. And on June 18th, Aaron and I are going to sit down and we're going to make some beautiful hamburgers with a Lebanese cherry salad, and we're going to pair them with those wines. So be sure to check in with us June 18th, again on the Plump Jack Plump Jack Facebook page, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'll be cooking up some burgers and having a great old time. Okay, so I mentioned we want that vinegar reduction nice and cold, so this has been set in the refrigerator. This was made a little bit earlier this morning. This is your tarragon, your black pepper, a little bit of that vinegar, and all of your shallots. And we're just going to add our egg yolks, all 6 of them. And we're just going to start mixing them in here. And we're going to make sure that this is well incorporated, equally mixed, because the next step is the hard step. All right, so it's about all we need. I mentioned that we need hot water. Set myself up for success. We're gonna drop that cloth. So we have some water that was boiling. I just have, maybe an inch in the bottom of this pan, just enough to steam. We're gonna essentially double boil these eggs. We wanna do it very slowly. This is gonna take 5 to 7 minutes and a constant whisking. Your forearms should feel tired, your shoulders should hurt. But this is the process. So we don't want them to cook too fast. So every once in a while, take a little bit off of heat. And we're just gonna mix figure eights. And we're just gonna keep mixing. And over time, you're gonna see these egg yolks are gonna start to solidify a little bit. They should get thicker and thicker.
Why a figure 8 stroke?
When you work in a figure 8, you're actually incorporating all of everything that you're trying to mix. If I just sit here and do this, all I'm doing is mixing the stuff that's over here. Meanwhile, everything else is settling down here. So the figure 8 running back and forth is going to bring everything together.
We have a question from Kristen. She wants to know, what if my hubby likes his steak medium well?
You know, that's okay. I know, some people will give you such a hard time. I know. Who cares how you like to eat your food? If you like it that way, you should eat it that way. Nobody should tell you that you're wrong. I like my steak medium. My wife likes her steak a little closer to raw. A little bit too raw for me. But you know, that's just the way that you have to do it. I would recommend, if you like your steak a little bit more well done, to go ahead and get thinner cuts of steak. It's going to allow you to retain a little bit more moisture. You're not going to have to cook it as long and really dry it out. You can keep it nice and moist. Also, it's all about creating a nice hard crust, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more once we get into cooking that really beautiful ribeye. So if you want to take a quick look, so you'll see it's starting to froth, almost like a sabayon. Still have a few more minutes to go. It's not quite thick enough. You definitely need to do this by hand. You don't want to do this with a mixer. That's just too aggressive. It's a slow process. You're letting it cook. I think we had a question from Facebook. I saw a hand up in the air.
What's the significance of the logo change in your Facebook profile?
You will notice, yes, that the Odette, Plumpjack, and Cade logos on all of our social media posts for the month of June all now feature a beautiful rainbow. And that is just part of us celebrating Pride Month. It's an important month recognizing the history of our LGBTQ community and all of the work that has been done to maintain their human rights. Honestly, that's what it really boils down to. There have been martyrs, there have been heroes, there are still heroes, and we just think it's important that it's recognized and that people are talking about it and that we take action. And yes, it's on all of our social media pages, but we're also doing stuff. We're being a part of our community. We are all about that inclusion and diversity. Love is love. So this is almost getting there. Hopefully you have your clarified butter on the ready, because once this is at a nice thickness, that when you take once you start to take your whisk through it, and you can see the lines of your whisk in the egg, then you know you've gotten it nicely mixed. We're not quite there yet. We're still a little bit on the runny side. We're almost there. I might need to go just a little bit faster. Another question.
So for people who are doing a little bit later, why are you pairing Chardonnay with steak?
Yeah, so welcome to Unusual Pairings. Sorry, I'm getting a blast of vinegar in my face. Welcome to Unusual Pairings with me, Adam Ryan, here at Odette State Winery. And yes, we are doing the Odette Reserve Chardonnay with a ribeye steak. And while you wouldn't classically think to bring the two together, what we are doing is we're creating a sauce that is going to bring those two together. And the sauce that we're making is Bearnaise. And the basic components of Bearnaise is white vinegar, egg yolks, butter, shallot, tarragon, and black pepper. That's really all it is. And so what you are going to get is you have this very eggy, creamy, buttery, rich sauce with an underlying layer of vivid acidity, which is sort of a congruent flavor complementing this Chardonnay. The two go together really beautifully. I think we've we just started to get there. See, it happens really, really fast. We're at that point, we're nice and thick. We're gonna take it off a little bit of heat. I'm gonna move my clarified butter into something with a pour spout.
Michael wants to know, do you prefer to remove the pot with water and steam away from the stove rather than in a double boiler over simmer?
You know, either would work. I'm partly doing this off the stove so that everybody here can see it. The nice thing about doing it off the stove is that you're not going to, you know, your water's not getting hotter, so you're not cooking the eggs nearly as fast. But if you had a bain-marie or a double boiler, you can absolutely do that submersion or just leave it on top of the stove. Either work. This is just what worked here for production value today, and it's a method that I just sort of enjoy. This bowl also sits nice and low in this pot, so we can get that steam and the contact of the bowl and the steam together pretty quickly. If it was a more shallow bowl, then maybe we'd want to do it over the stovetop. So, at this stage, eggs, nice and mixed, nice and frothy, a little bit thick. What we're gonna do, again, you just gotta keep whisking, and one steady stream, you're just gonna start pouring that clarified butter. I know I'm making a bunch of noise here, probably driving our production team crazy.
Shout out to Lee Chick. Lee is a sommelier who loves Plump Jack and Odette wines, and he's just giving us a shout out, telling everyone to be safe. And
thank you, Lee.
Looking forward to life getting back to normal.
Oh, no kidding. And you know, that's the really sad thing. We're very fortunate here, at the wineries. As much as we'd love to be hosting you and having you visit, we've been able to, stay in touch and host things like this and keep selling you wine and, still feel like we're a part of your lives and you can feel like you're a part of our lives. Because that's really why we do this. We make wine for people, not for points. It's something that, we do it for each other and we do it for all of you. Unfortunately, the restaurant business, and I come from the restaurant business, it's very difficult, very sad, and we're all very much looking for life to go back to a little bit of normal, but hopefully we don't let the injustices in our world to, sort of fizzle out. We want that outrage to not burn out. Unfortunately, in the past, too many times it has, and hopefully this is the last time that we let those injustices and that brutality be forgotten.
On another note, Zoe wants to know, while the tasting rooms remain closed for the time being, is there a way Plump Jack fans can enjoy a tasting from the comfort of their home?
Oh my gosh, Zoe, you're so smart. Yes, there is. We are offering virtual tasting experiences and are going to continue to do so even after we open, because we recognize that it's something that people don't always have time to get away from work and away from their homes and travel across the country. And so, why not take 45 minutes out of your Saturday afternoon and drink some great bottles of wine? And one of our team here in Napa will sit down with you, enjoy a glass, and talk about these wines, and usually have a beautiful backdrop for you to look at, and it's so much fun. So definitely go to our shopping cart on the Plump Jack website, and you will see virtual tasting experiences. Okay, oh my gosh, this turned out beautiful. I can't wait to eat this.
So Adam, about how long, if they're cooking along at home, or someone mentioned that they were going to be cooking this later, and following along later, about how long did you just patiently whisk that and add that butter?
So it took probably about 5 minutes of just whisking the eggs, and then in just one steady stream, another probably 3 minutes of pouring that butter in. And what you'll have is this beautiful bright yellow sauce. There's one more step before we're going to be done with this, and we don't want this to be a chunky sauce. We want it to really be a refined dish. So get yourself an empty pan, pot, or little bowl. You're going to want a sieve or a thin colander like this. You're going to need a spoon. And we're just going to run all this sauce right through the sieve. So we're leaving behind the black pepper, we're leaving behind the tarragon, we're leaving behind the shallots. We've gotten all the flavor out of them that we want. We don't need them anymore. And so now once this is done, you want to just cover it with a little saran wrap. That's gonna help prevent it from forming a skin. And you can set it in just a warm place and hold on to it until you need it. All right, that's gonna do. You could also, refrigerate this and bring it back up, and very slowly. You would not want to cook it because you're going to then cook the eggs and essentially make scrambled eggs if you were to try to heat it really quickly. And so instead, you would want to very slowly warm this sauce up if you had refrigerated it. All right, make sure I have I'm going to need this because we're going to deal with a hot pan here in a second. Set that aside. Okay, so we're going to cover this. We're going to set it aside, and then we're going to get into the meat. I know everybody's probably been waiting. Like, when are you going to cook that ribeye? How do you cook that ribeye? Yeah, we have a question from Facebook.
What's the other bottle on the table?
So, somebody told me today that you really shouldn't pair Chardonnay with steak. But I disagree, and I promise to prove them wrong with this sauce. But if you are a little bit more of a traditionalist and you want something, acidic and really fruity and really great tannin structure and just a really killer Cabernet, you should really come out here to Odette and try the Adaptation Cabernet Sauvignon Napa Valley. This is our 2017 vintage. It's available online. It's available by calling and talking to our team here. Or if you come and visit, you can carry out as many bottles as you like. And it is incredible. I should pour myself just a little glass so you can see sort of this excellent color. The Adaptation is a reflection of Cabernet Sauvignon from a broader spectrum of Napa Valley. Jeff Owens, our winemaker here, makes the Odette Estate Cabernet and the Odette Estate Reserve Cabernet using just fruit from these almost 40 acres here in Stags Leap District. And so the Adaptation is our way of showing a broader parts of Napa Valley. And this fruit sometimes will come a little bit from this property and then also from really excellent Cabernet vineyards in Calistoga and the northeastern part of Napa Valley. It's a great Cabernet to enjoy with a meaty steak like this if you're a traditionalist. But I like to push the limits a little bit sometimes. And that's why I recommended Reserve Chardonnay. So I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to throw on another pair of gloves. So we're going to work with this excellent ribeye. Now the ribeye, you may be wondering, where does the ribeye come from? It comes from cows. Ha ha ha. No, where the ribeye comes from is actually between the 6th and 12th rib of the Angus. You'll see right there, mark the rib. That's where the ribeye is coming from. It's one of my favorite cuts. If you want good marbling, soft texture, and really just for the best bang for your buck. I mean, a New York is awesome, but a ribeye is just my absolute favorite. And there's two parts of the ribeye. These are not bone-in. You're welcome to use bone-in ribeyes. The bone-in will help retain a little bit more moisture. What it will also do is it does kind of prevent it from cooking quite as evenly, so you have to be a little bit more careful if you really want that well-done steak. Probably don't get the ribeye with the bone in, because all around that bone, it's not going to ever come to a well done. And so I like to work with the ones where the bones have been taken out, and you just get a little bit more of an even cook across the entire steak. I'm really struggling with this glove today. So, two parts of the ribeye. We have the actual rib eye, so that's the portion coming off of the rib, You see all that great marbling. And then we have what's known as the cap. And the cap is, usually you end up eating it first. I save it for last because that's really where the most tender meat is. One of my very favorites. Now all we need to do with this, nice salt, just a good helping of salt, and coarse black pepper. Now you want to use freshly ground coarse pepper because if you were to use the really fine pre-ground stuff, what will happen is, we're just going to flip that, grab a little more salt. What will happen is that it will actually burn in the pan. You don't want that. The coarser salt is going to help prevent that from happening. Now I've already preheated my oven to 475 degrees. So it is smoking hot. I've got this pan off heat. I'm going to let it come back hot again. So I have a cast iron pan. We're going to get that smoking hot almost till you start seeing smoke come off of it. Should take just a minute here. This is an important step too. You want to run your steak all through that leftover salt, and if you think you put on too much salt, you can't. I'm a huge fan of lots of salt. I like salty flavor, but really this meat is meant to absorb all that salt and make it a really, really beautiful dish. So my pan, not quite hot enough yet, so we have a second for any questions. Actually, you know what? Why don't I throw this out there while I still have everyone here and nobody has probably gotten off yet. If you need something else to do and you actually really enjoy this, I'm going to take a break next week, and in my place is going to be a very talented chef. His name is Goran Bazaroff, and Goran is our chef at the Balboa Cafe in San Francisco, down in the marina. And Goran is, I should say, the Balboa Cafe is part of our Plump Jack Hospitality group, so it's within our family. We share resources, we talk to each other, we work with each other, we celebrate with each other. It's a fantastic restaurant. If you've never been, get a burger, get a Bloody Mary, and then probably after that, get the chicken paillard, which is what Goran is going to come up here the 11th, June 11th, at 2 o'clock, and he is going to come up here and he's going to show you how to make his famous chicken paillard. So Goran Bazaroff, our chef at the Balboa Cafe, awesome, talented chef, going to show you, and he's a professional, I'm just a home cook, so you can take what I say and leave it, but he's going to have some real tricks up his sleeve. All right. So I can ditch this glove. I'm going to hang on to my other glove. We're going to put that in the pan. All right, pan is hot, almost smoking. I'm going to grab myself a little bit of canola oil. We're going to put a couple tablespoons. We're going to get that nice and hot. And then we're just going to gently rest our ribeye into the pan. It's going to give you a nice sizzle, hard, hot. You want to get that crust. You're going to let it sit there for about 1, 2, 2.5 minutes. Looks like the oil's already ready to go, so we're going to get this started. I'll bring this up closer so everyone can see. Just very gently, don't throw it in there. So we're just going to let that oil and let it sit for about 2 minutes. At that point, we'll take it and we'll flip it. We'll throw in our little finishing ingredients, and then we'll throw it in the oven. That'll take another couple of minutes, and we'll get our potatoes done. And we're getting really close. Oh my gosh! Oh, it's already been almost an hour, but we're getting really close. I promise. We're gonna be able to carve this up for you, let you see it. Hopefully, you are back home making it yourself. Right. We ditch this glove. Clean up our space a little bit. I'm one of those people I like to clean up as I go. Makes it a little bit more enjoyable when you are when you're all done eating. There's a little bit less to clean up afterwards.
Michael says the Odette Reserve Cab and the PJ Syrah would also be fun with this steak.
This would also be really fun with that steak. I totally agree. I mean, steak is a great dinner. I'm probably going to have this steak here, and then I'll go home and cook off another steak for dinner tonight. My wife isn't here with me today, so If I'm eating steak for a late lunch, she gets steak for dinner. So steak is great. It's really, really designed for enjoying with wine. There's a lot of fat. You're adding a lot of salt. It has the ability to carry that umami flavor through the palate, which then the wine can kind of wash over, opening up new flavors in the wine, new flavors in the steak. They're really, really well designed for each other. All right, I think my steak is about ready to flip. There's a couple of steps here. We're gonna grab ourselves a couple of sprigs of fresh thyme, and we're gonna break off just a couple pieces of garlic. You don't need to peel it. I like to just give it a little smash. Kind of help extract some of those oils and flavors, that aroma. So you got those in hand. Let me grab this pan so you can see.
Adam, what kind of aromas and smells should they be getting right at this point?
Oh man, what kind of aromas and smells are you getting? You should get that hot oil. You should get that that really beautiful umami. It's just, I mean, it smells like man. I'm kidding. Let me grab a spoon. This is one of the key tricks. This is what they do at every steakhouse. You should do it at home. We're just gonna wash some of that oil right over the top. So that way when you flip it, it doesn't lose all that moisture.
Is there a key to knowing when to flip your steak?
You know, really, you can take a look and check, but you want this nice hard crust. That's what you want. That's what's gonna seal in all that melted fat, all that oil, all that moisture, all that flavor. It's really a key part. So if you got a nice hot pan, it should only take, you know, a minute or two for you to get that crust. So we're gonna add our garlic, our fresh thyme, a pat of butter. Throw these thyme right here on top. Get that flavor in there. And we're gonna throw this into the oven for 2 to 3 minutes. We're gonna wanna check on it after 2 minutes, get an idea for its temperature. If you know you like your steak well, you know, let it sit for 4 minutes. If you know you like your steak rare, let it sit for 1. So I'm gonna come back in 2. I like a nice mid-rare plus, somewhere just under a medium. All right, so steak's in the oven. We've got just a couple of minutes while we wait for that to finish. We're not gonna slice into it as soon as it comes out of the oven. We're gonna let it rest. What that resting time is going to do is it's gonna allow for those juices to then restructure themselves in the meat. If you just sliced into your steak right off the bat, as soon as it came out of the oven, it's just gonna run all over the place and you're gonna lose all that beautiful moisture. It's not gonna get cold if you let it sit for 5 minutes. I'm gonna move these wines. I'm gonna move these eggs because we're done with them. I'm gonna grab these potatoes. So we have limp potatoes. We're gonna throw these back into the fryer and we're gonna have beautiful golden brown potatoes. We're also gonna grab a couple of sprigs of flat Italian parsley. It's one of my favorite things. You can just sprinkle this on almost anything that you want to have a real savory flavor. Eggs, potatoes, vegetables, meat, almost anything. Chop it up pretty fine, sprinkle it over the top. Chop it up pretty coarse, sprinkle it over the top. It's a good finish, gives great flavor. I love it.
So we have a question.
Yeah.
One of our viewers says 475 is a high temperature to finish steak because they usually see around 400. So why do you like the higher temperature?
I like the higher temperature because you're keeping the pan at the same temperature that it came off of that hot fire at. At 400, you're more broiling as opposed to searing. What I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to get an equally good brown crust on the bottom, but also sort of add a little bit more heat over the top to cook the inside as well. If you prefer it at 400 and you like the steak that comes out, do it that way. But give this a try one time. See if see if it works for you. Right. So we're gonna chop these up while our frites go into a second fry. Remember, we have our oil set to 375 degrees. If you're not using a fryer like this one, what you can do is get yourself a candy and oil thermometer and throw it into a pot. So these are kind of limp and not all that delicious looking right now, but I promise they're gonna come out of this oil just looking like the best French fries you've ever had. Remember, don't overcrowd. If you need to work in batches, work in batches. I'm just making a small amount just for me. It looks like actually a lot for me. I should probably feed my production team. But we're gonna go ahead and drop these down. It's gonna be about a 2-minute fry, but you're looking for just a golden brown. And there it goes, bubbling again. That steak, I can hear it. I think I want to check on it before I start chopping these up. Okay, so steak, it's looking great, butter's melted. Look at all that awesome garlic. You can smell the garlic now. I'm gonna grab that spoon. I'm just gonna wash a little bit more over the top. Keep it nice and moist. Now the best way to check the temperature on your steak, you can grab a meat thermometer and that's a good way to do it. But then you're just piercing your steak and you're letting moisture run out of that hole. You can actually just check with your finger. If you were to extend your hand out and you push on that sort of meaty part in between your thumb and your index finger while your hand is extended or your thumb is extended, then you have a medium rare. If you bring your thumb in and you push on that again, it gets a little bit meatier. That's more of a medium. So I'm going to give it's looking like I might have gotten, there's a couple of mid-rare parts, but a little bit close to medium. I think it's perfect. It's exactly how I want it. So I'm going to take this out. Look at that bottom part right there. We're going to let this sit. And seriously, let it sit for 5 minutes. Don't rush yourself. You're going to really be much happier with the steak that you have if you let it sit. All right, we're going to check on these potatoes. Oh, they're looking there. We're almost there. I'm excited to eat. I should probably grab my plate. I need to grab my sauce. I need to chop up this parsley. And then we're going to have an awesome late afternoon lunch. Fresh herbs, you don't need to chop them up so that you can't even recognize what you had. I like to know what I'm eating. So, that's about all that you need to chop it up to. We're going to hold on to that. We are going to have our salt ready. These French fries are looking done. So we're going to take these out of the fryer. Just throw them onto paper towel. We're going to let those sit and air dry for a minute. While they've got some oil on them, we'll go ahead and hit them up with some salt. We'll let that salt stick with the oil so that way as they dry and cool off a little bit, you don't lose all that excellent salt. Okay. What do we need? We need our sauce. We need our plate. We got our fork, our napkin, almost there. And here is our Bearnaise. Here is our steak. We're getting so close. We've got our plate. Excellent, my napkin, my fork. All right. Now, when you plate this up, you're welcome to just, throw your steak, throw your frites, and drizzle the Bearnaise right over the top of the whole plate. That is a fine way to do it. That's what I do at home. But it looks a little bit cleaner, and sometimes you can get, sometimes you want a bite of steak without any Bearnaise just to taste that flavor. So get yourself a little ramekin. So I'm going to grab a spoon, go ahead and just put this Bearnaise right into our ramekin. frites. Go ahead and get these on the plate. Oh, those smell good. I wish we had smell-o-vision, you know, when you're cooking this kind of stuff. I wish we could be here with you. All right, last part. Scrape my knife. So we're gonna cut our steak. In the recipe, and probably every steak recipe that you've ever seen, everyone has said cut against the grain and at an angle. At an angle, that's nice and easy. Against the grain, what does that mean? Well, when you take your steak and you start looking at it, you see that? You see how the grain, when I start peeling that apart, that's the grain, the way that the meat is running. So it's running there. So you just want to cut perpendicular to that. The reason being is that when you are chewing it, if I was to cut with the grain, then the meat's fibers are holding it together and they're not going to break down with your teeth. When you cut against the grain, then the meat is just fall apart. So when you get that fall apart steak, really it's because somebody knew how to cut it. So we're going to take a look here. Oh, see, right here in the middle, it's grain's running this way. So we're going to have to cut this steak. You can't just cut it all the way down. You've got to cut it in a couple of different ways. So we'll go ahead. This is looking good. There's that marbly fat. Oh yeah, see, that's a little bit more, yeah, a little bit mid-rare right there. A little on the rare side, but not purple. Nice. Get yourself a good knife. Definitely want a good knife for cutting steaks. You don't want to tear this meat apart. Just keep it sharp. Alright, that's all gristle. We'll let that sit. So I'm just going to grab a couple of pieces here. Excellent. Throw those on the plate. You know, one big ribeye is probably good for 2 people. If you're a big guy, eat the whole thing. You know, you only live once. Get my towel, clean up this plate a little bit. We're gonna finish it. A little bit of this chopped parsley. Throw that over the fries, we'll throw that over the steak. This is a rustic dish. You don't need anything really refined looking here. This is supposed to be enjoyed with a beautiful glass of Chardonnay. Cabernet if you really have to. We have one more question, I believe.
You mentioned get yourself a good knife, and it looks like you have a different knife from our previous episode.
I do.
So, any chance you can tell our viewers what
What do I
your
have? What are we doing?
thoughts are on a good knife?
Yeah, so last month we were working with fish, and so I had a nice fish fillet knife. It was, you know, just a normal knife for a house cook. You know, if I was a professional chef, I'd probably have something a lot nicer. But it was a Wüsthof, German steel. Worked great, nice flexibility, really sharp, easy to keep sharp. You also want to have a good chef's knife, sort of the all-purpose. It'll help you chop, you know, chopping vegetables, chopping spices, herbs, and meat. And so the knife that I have today, I know I said you don't have to go out and buy Japanese steel and spend the money, but Japanese steel is excellent. And actually, Yoshihiro makes a beautiful knife that is moderately priced, and you can source them here, you know, in the U.S. One of the longest running steel knife makers in Japan, and this is the Yoshihiro 8-inch 16 layer Damascus knife. It's well balanced, it's sharp, it's easy to keep sharp. Take care of your knives, you know. I choose to, you know, like if I wash them, even with soap, usually just hot water, but if I wash them with soap, it's a very mild detergent. Hand dry your knives every time, don't let them air dry. It'll keep them looking nice, it'll keep them lasting longer, it'll keep the handle attached to the blade. Just take care of your knives, treat them like the tools that they are. You don't let your chainsaw rust, don't let your knife rust. Okay, so I need my fork, my knife, my glass of Chardonnay. Take a little smell. big piece. We'll take a smaller piece here. I'm just gonna dip it right into my Bearnaise. There's that tart vinegar, aggressive, right on the front. The steak holds up with it. This is a classic French dish. The potatoes obviously are going to be great because potatoes are always great. And with that Chardonnay, you can really see how the aromas of that like beautiful creaminess in the wine really show up also in that sauce. This is one of my favorites. It's something I could eat once a week if I could afford it, you know? So, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I hope you enjoy this dish. If you really can't stand Chardonnay with your steak, please enjoy some Cabernet. It's well worth having. I want to remind everybody just one last time, June 11th, come back, see Goran Bazaroff, our chef at Balboa Cafe, cook a beautiful chicken paillard with some plumpjack merlot. And then the following week, catch up with me and Aaron Miller, our winemaker at Plumpjack. The two of us are going to make some burgers. We'll have those recipes out really soon. I want to remind everybody to stay strong. Black lives absolutely matter. Happy Pride Month, and we'll see you all on the other side.